The truth is out there, and so are the fans, in a new series of 5-minute specials. BBC2 meets the X-Files.
I'm Sonia Wilkinson. I'm a student at City of London Freeman School, and I am completely obsessed with the X-Files. I try and look like Scully as much as I can, obviously. I watch it over and over again. I get the posters, I buy pictures, books, everything, absolutely everything I can get my hands on.
It's not the kind of programme that I would normally watch. I'm not a science fiction fan. In fact, I'd have probably run a mile at a synopsis of the plots. But I accidentally turned to the channel in the middle of an episode called Squeeze, and I was presented with an actress in a role that reversed the normal gender types that you see on television. And so what you have is a female character who is portrayed as scientific and logical, intelligent, and a male character who is the one who is intuitive, who makes the leaps of imagination. And it's quite interesting to see them that way around, because they're always presented the other way around.
Why would I make them so uncomfortable?
It probably has to do with your reputation.
Reputation? I have a reputation?
Mulder, look, Colton plays by the book and you don't. They feel your methods, your theories are...
Spooky? Do you think I'm spooky?
There is a part of Mulder and a part of Scully inside me. I do like to believe things, but I have to check them out first to see if they're actually right. I don't want to just believe everything as they are, but I don't want to pass everything off either.
Are you suggesting that I go before the violent crime section and present a profile declaring that these murders are done by aliens?
No, of course not. I find no evidence of alien involvement.
Well, what then? That this is the work of a 100-year-old serial killer who's capable of overpowering a healthy 6'2" businessman?
And he should stick out in a crowd with 10-inch fingers.
She also didn't look like any of the other actresses you see on television. She's only 5'3" on a good day. She's sort of curvy, but not in a Pamela Anderson kind of way. And she mixes in and gets in the fights and behaves the way you would expect an FBI agent to behave.
You all right?
Well, when I discovered that I had the same kind of face as her, I had the same colour eyes and the same shaped mouth, I realised that my hair used to be long and, well, it was blonde until I dyed it. So I decided if I had it cut in the same way as hers, then as it suited her, it would suit me as well. And the suits, well, I've always liked the sort of clean-cut way of dressing in a suit. And I started wearing them as well. I feel comfortable wearing them. The Scully expression, it's a skeptical expression, something along the lines of, I think that her way of life is very good because she's always so organised about things. She won't let her life get into a mess like Mulder has. I've made an effort to be more organised and try sorting my thoughts out, but it doesn't work. I am not her, that's the problem.
When Gillian Anderson was 8 months pregnant, they started a storyline where she was abducted. Now, you don't know whether she was abducted by aliens or by a government conspiracy, but she was taken away, put in the boot of a car, and driven from Washington, D.C. to a mountaintop called Skyland Mountain in Virginia, at which point she disappeared in a bright light up into a dark sky and wasn't seen again for a couple of episodes. We were going to America on holiday this summer, and my husband booked that we should stay in Washington, D.C. So we went and visited all the sites there. We went on the FBI tour. And then we went to Virginia. We took the same drive that they were supposed to have done on the show. We drove along the road. We stopped where her car stopped. I tied a gag around my son's face and put him in the boot of the car and took a photo of him. And after I'd done that, he took a bit of persuading, I have to say, to do this. Although he is a fan of the show, I thought, if anyone had come along here and seen me with a child tied up in the boot of the car, I could have been in serious trouble. And if they hadn't been an X-Files fan, I don't know where I would have been. But, I mean, it sounds a mad thing to do, but you have to bear in mind it is only a television programme after all.
Mulder and Scully investigate a series of sinister experiments, the first of a gripping two-parter beginning on BBC1 shortly.
Ever since I've been, so small, I used to start ghost gangs and stuff, in school, and make all my friends come to it and talk to them about spirits and poltergeists and stuff. And, it kind of touched something inside me, the X-Files, and I just thought, this is really interesting.
I just became captivated by it. It was so different. We hadn't seen anything like this before, and it just took over. Nothing else mattered.
The way it starts, you have the letters typing up at the bottom of the screen. You're like, oh yes, we're back home again. And then you've got the theme tune coming up, and you hum along with it.
When I go to bed at night after watching it, if it's a certain episode, I will sort of be on edge. I'm more into the sort of freaks of nature, and the whole idea of there being people who can control elements and freaks who like to eat people's livers and things like that.
Ice is my favourite episode. They're left in the Arctic, in this place called Icy Cape, and there's this killer organism on the loose.
Where do we start?
Body bags are on the plane. Before we touch anything, we have to thoroughly document the scene.
It squirms like in the back of your neck, like at the base of your skull, and it's horrible. It just goes through. You can see it moving across the skin, and it's gross.
Oh my God.
The way Mulder and Scully deal with it is so interesting, and it's just brilliant. And I just could not believe the scene where they pull guns on each other. I was just totally enthralled by it.
Mulder!
Scully, get that gun off me!
Mulder, you have to understand!
Put it down!
You put it down first!
Scully!
There's a lot of close-ups. And they each say a few words, like, it's not me, and Scully says, put the gun down. And it flicks continually. There's 7 close-ups in quick succession. And it makes you feel really unaware of what's going on, and your eyes are following each of them, and you don't know their position with one another. And there's this red light shining through in the background, and it just adds tension, it adds fear. It's like, like a beacon. It's just really dark. You've always, behind the characters, there's always darkness. You can rarely ever see where they've come from, whether anything's going to come out to threaten them. And it kind of gives you a really unsettling feeling. It's not a very pleasant feeling, but it works because it makes you feel more paranoid, and I think that's the real formula of the show.
I think my favourite episode out of the X-Files would have to be Fire, because it just came out of nowhere. You'd had episodes like Ice, which dealt with worms and parasites, and then all of a sudden you had this man who could control the elements. He was a pyromaniac. And he was just so believable and scary that if a man could control the elements, he would be unstoppable.
Oh my God. Now that is a trick.
He doesn't look like the person that would be one of these maniacs, and he comes over very well as this sort of nice caretaker.
Anything I can do for you? Anything at all? You just holler.
The character's name is Cecil Lively. You see his eyes, and it's all in his eyes. He's just so believable, scary. He's totally focused, he's totally obsessed. Mulder's trapped in a burning building, and there are 2 children locked in a room, and he has to actually confront his fear of fire. And you see him trying to knock down this door. Then the camera pans round to see Cecil Lively standing at the end of the corridor, and he says a brilliant line, and he goes, "Time to call 911. I think too many people have seen too many things for it not to be true. And although the government will deny everything, I think in everyone's heart people know that there is something out there.
I think just from talking in the office, she would sort of come in the day after the X-Files and go, "Ooh, anyone see the X-Files? Anyone see the X-Files?" And then sort of the closet X-Files would come out and start talking about it.
Yeah. Or somebody would make a reference to it. They would say, if somebody said, "Oh, that's spooky," somebody would say "Spooky Mulder," and you'd know that was another X-File.
Like the secret handshake.
Yes. In some ways, the first few times I watched it, it was quite refreshing to see that she's the doctor and she's the scientist, and he's the one that he just knows, and he's the one that just says, "I know." And that's always been the role of women, to just have the intuitive thing. But as the series has gone on, she's like the sidekick, she's the also-ran, and we know that Mulder's right most of the time.
That's why I really like Beyond the Sea, because in that one it's complete role reversal, and Mulder's the one saying, "Oh, don't believe this guy, don't believe this guy, he's a fake."
What you're really saying is that you didn't want to go on record admitting that you believed in Boggs. The Bureau would expect something like that from Spooky Mulder, but not Dana Scully.
Scully's really broken up because her dad's just died, and she's saying to Mulder, "Oh, but you always said we should leave ourselves open to paranormal experiences," and he's going, "Yes, but not in this case, not in this case."
I thought that you'd be pleased that I'd opened myself to extreme possibilities.
Why now? After all we've seen, why Boggs?
You get the real sort of crunch point at the end where Mulder just sort of says, "But after everything you've seen and all the evidence, why can't you believe?"
I'm afraid. I'm afraid to believe.
You couldn't face that fear? Even if it meant never knowing what your father wanted to tell you?
She's torn between the logic of knowing that it's all quite unlikely and the fear of there not almost, if there's anything worse than the fear of there being something out there, I think it's probably the fear that there isn't anything out there. And I think sometimes all her cold logic takes her through to the conclusion that we're just all on our own in this universe.
Somewhere, wait for me.
They do sort of put in quite a few clues that might suggest that she's meant to be psychic. After her dad dies, she keeps getting visions of him appearing to her and trying to say something to her. And so I think that'd be quite a good thing to build up, to have the complete non-believer to be the one who's actually got the powers.
People's fears are much less black and white now. I think people just, they fear their own government as well, and they fear that things are being covered up. So they're not as frightened of the aliens, but they're frightened more of what's going on at home rather than anything that's coming from outside, I think.
I don't believe you.
Oh, well, there's plenty of room in that cold, dark place for liars, Scully. You go ahead and play it like you need to, but I know you believe me.
That's another thing, that people are very frightened of that. People are afraid of diseases that they can't see, and the fear of science, and the fear of something outside that you don't know what it is, and it's just in you.
If I die, that boy goes to that cold, dark place.
When you're watching the X-Files, you just get completely sucked into the whole universe and of the X-Files, and everything's a conspiracy and everything's a plot. And for like 40 minutes, you just get completely swept up in it. And then afterwards, you turn around and go, "What a load of rubbish! That's completely barmy." So I don't think I'm sort of going out looking for UFOs or anything. Although I think it's probably quite healthy to have a suspicion of your government. But I'm not going to stand there and wait to be abducted.
You're not watching the skies?
No, I'm not watching the skies, I'm afraid.